Welcome everybody to
Greetings,
Here to Help
greetings,
You.
greetings.
We were catching some jokes back here. Well, I'll tell you who I was catching some jokes with. I was catching some jokes with my co-host, the Don, Dave Rankin.
Yes, 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 yes. Alongside the Donette, who's an absolute comedian. She had me cracking over a while ago. Big up, Jordan. Big up, big up, big up. Well, you know how that goes.
You know what? I guess we have to say this. It's been a wonderful first month of the year. I hope it's been a wonderful first month of the year for everybody. One thing that I will say in this month is I've actually learned quite a bit.
Okay.
And with saying that, one thing I realize more now than ever is that I have to speak more, especially about things that I know will help the community, right?
That's the aim, right? I mean, not just our platform, but of course, everybody else who's out here doing something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Regardless, right? That is the outcome. Is that, we go ahead, we do what we can, of course, as individuals, in order to go ahead and spread it amongst the masses.
So in saying that, this month, upcoming month, is African History Month, Black History Month, however you like to call it.
Liberation
Month. And it is also fitting that it is Mental Health Month, I believe, as well. And what's interesting about that, because I don't know if you guys have noticed now in Toronto, if you're watching, all over now you're seeing those Let's Talk bell.
Yes.
Everywhere. I mean, like before, I didn't even see them up until like 2 weeks ago, and now they're every single place I look, on a bus, on those big ones, like they're everywhere. So Bell has gone on this huge campaign because they know it's that time. So let's talk. Let's talk about Let's Talk. Like the whole basis of that is looking at the mental health that's happening. The mental health issues that are arising here in Canada, and the lack of, that lack of urgency to deal with them, right? What are you typing away?
Sorry, you know how it goes, man. We got to just share the thing.
Jeez, okay.
If we don't share it in here, it takes a bit longer for everybody else to go and share it. By means, everybody who's listening right now, please like, subscribe, and share.
Yes, please. All right, thank you, Dave, for that. Man, you're a good pitch man. Okay, so back to serious topics. So what we figured we would do this month is, of course, you guys know Dave and I we teach in the community privately.
Yes.
And I figured this be a great time to talk about what we both excel in. Most of my education is in psychology, the European psychology, everything's from Freud and up. And of course, now I've gone a little bit deeper to learn about how psychology, of course, is a little bit different depending on your culture. It's not always going to be the same, right? It doesn't always look the same. It doesn't always manifest the same. And for a lot of us, though, we're dealing with mental health issues and have no idea, especially, I'm going to say this to start. It's not just an African issue. This is something that is worldwide. People are going through, this world is not a really easy place to live in.
True.
Right? And for us, we deal in North America with a different type of stress because we're going up against a lot, right? So I know a lot of us may think we're okay, but a lot of us, you know what? Our lives are probably not the way they could be because we are suffering silently. And I want those people who are suffering silently to understand, first of all, their history, and this is where Dave comes in, because for everything there has to be some type of context, right?
Yes.
So before I go any further, maybe this is the time to introduce that video. Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to show a video. Her name is Dr. Joy DeGruy.
Yes.
I appreciate her stance on a lot of things, and I just want you guys to take a listen to this, and especially those of African descent who live here in the Americas. Just listen to what she has to say.
Kind of a fundamental basis for post-traumatic slave syndrome. How many of you are familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder? But when we start talking about chattel slavery, we're not talking about one trauma. We're not talking about a specific event. We're talking about generations of trauma with no intervention. Based on what I know about sugar plantations, tobacco, the Caribbean, what I know about American chattel slavery and the plantations there, does anyone right now ever recall mental health assistance to slaves? Anybody remember sending in the therapist after I sold off your son, daughter, raped folks? At any point? Never. Second question. After slavery was officially over, now you're free. Anybody remember any therapy then? We know it's been rough, it's been deep for you, it's been difficult. We're going to do a little group therapy. Anybody remember that? That would be no. Number 3, after slavery officially ended, both in the States, in the Caribbean, the British ended, do you remember whether or not trauma continued? Did the trauma continue for people of African descent? I need to know. Okay, so now let's do the math. Hundreds of years of trauma, no treatment. Freed, more trauma, no treatment. What do you do the math? Do you think there may be residual impacts of that trauma?
So if people don't know about Dr. Joy, I would definitely say, look her up. She, of course, as a psychologist,
Right.
I would have to say I have to, of course, look up to those who just are doing it. And
Yes.
she's one of them.
Of course.
Right.
Her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder or Syndrome, I believe it's one of the two.
Yeah.
Good read, very insightful, very impactful as well, right? It's something that needs to be looked at a little further.
Agreed.
Right, whether it's in small group discussions, whether it's larger classes, or whether just put it into some sort of like curriculum.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I'm not sure what happens, of course, across the border. Maybe she's already there. I mean, her work is already there. But I know this side of the border, you find it's very rare for a college or university to go ahead and actually have somebody as a Dr. Joy DeGroot within their curriculum, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it'd be interesting in regards to how that would play out.
Well, for now, because that we now have given that to the community again. And
Mm-hmm.
again, we're here to not only share what we know, but what we've learned from
Yes.
others, right?
Yes.
So this is, again, anyone who's interested in this type of topic, which I think everyone should be, but that's just, again, my opinion, so don't listen to that. Honestly, I'm
You know
just
it goes.
suggesting.
Right.
I'm suggesting. This
People
would
out there
be-
got to go ahead and actually feel the weight for
They do.
themselves,
They
right?
do, and
It's
I
like,
understand that.
It's like when we teach in class, right? And especially when we're breaking down mythology, right? You have to grasp something from the myth, right? In order for it to
Resonate.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right? So, same thing.
So I want to talk about, we have a few minutes before, and when we come back, we'll go into some more details. We have a lot of terms today. This is a little bit of a heavy subject, but we're making sure we have all the information there so you can go back, write things down. So if you have time, grab a notebook. If you're driving, don't worry, it will be here after. You can listen to it.
Yeah, don't write and drive, please.
So, oh, Lord. So let's talk about, and again, I have my information here in front of me. I'm going to have Jordan to be showing you some images. There's some pictographs that I have as well.
Okay.
Just to kind of, because again, it's so dense.
It is, and you know what, like the pictures will go ahead and break up everything, of course, and it adds something, it has something of death as well, right?
So let's start with what I want to talk about, because we have a whole bunch of them, but that'll be going throughout the month, is the mood disorders.
Okay.
So I was laughing earlier about so there's a book called the DSM-5, and you can leave that one up. Thank you. That's fine. The DSM-5, it talks about basically all the psychological disorders that exist here in North America.
Okay.
Okay, everything they see and again, there's rules that go with this book. So it's not like a book that you can just pick up, what a lot of people do, and just try to I have this and this and this and this. No, right? So mood disorders, they fall into the basic group of elevated moods such as mania or hypomania. So to explain that, it's like, if you can picture it, it's someone whose moods are erratic. So they can go from being really calm, really cool, relaxed, to like wanting to clean everything. They could be up for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days sometimes. Like these people, I mean, it's very, very extreme, right? So there's a few things that fall under mood disorders. There's anxiety, and I'm giving the ones that people will be able to like understand on their day-to-day, because these are the ones that are mostly, for me, seen just in my interactions with people in our community. These are the ones that I would say I see the most. So the anxiety, there's depression, and we're going to go through all this, and don't worry, Jordan, because poor Jordan has to deal with me sometimes because I never give him really good directions, so I apologize. But you do really good. Sorry for my foolishness. I will let you guys, Jordan, know so he can make sure he's putting up the right information for you. So depression is probably a huge one.
Yes.
Then, of course, there's bipolar disorder, which is completely misunderstood. And then psychosis, which I have a personal experience with. So when we come back, we'll go a little bit deeper into some of these mental health issues that we deal with.
We are doing this event for the community. But what if CEO actually stood for catching every opportunity? This week alone, I've seen 3 businesses that shut their doors in this community.
Investing in yourself, like you have to know what your brand is first. So there's no other way that you're going to build a brand unless you network. You have to eventually get out there.
And it stems down to a lot of times not having the right knowledge, the right know-how.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the last show of the month. And we are actually doing a kickoff for what we're going to be considered 2 very serious and I think important topics that are occurring in 1 month.
Yeah.
The first is African History Month, and the second is Mental Health Awareness Month. So what does this have to do with us? So if you guys just are tuning in, we played a video from Dr. Joy talking about how Africans here in the Americas have actually become enslaved in their own minds.
Right.
And she terms it
Post-traumatic
slave disorder.
Yes.
Or
Or
what was the other one?
Syndrome.
Syndrome.
Either one of the 2.
So she went on to say that basically after slavery, there was no mental health given to us.
Right.
Even though we've been through such extreme trauma and continue to go through it. And again, I've started to do some looking into transgenerational trauma to see how sometimes this trauma from our ancestors, I mean, way before we were even here, has ended up in some of us, right?
Yeah. You know, Dr. Amos Wilson once said that it takes about 7 generations to uproot just one mishap.
7 generations. So think about that.
Yeah.
Like there's things that are stuck in us from
And that's not even going into, of course, what happened with took place during, of course, the slave.
Yeah.
Right? Excuse me, the genocide. Because
Yes.
it wasn't a trade. There was no equal trade about it. It was a genocide.
a genocide, yeah.
Right? So now, you can just imagine, in regards to, of course, the passing of down from generation to generation to generation. Let's take this now, right? Let's say a man cheats on his wife,
Okay.
right? And of course, they born now, of course, an illegitimate child, right? Through, of course, his concubine, or whatever you want to call her, right? Look how that affects the family alone in that first generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And of course, that first generation, those first generation children go on to have children and more children and more
And
children.
that trauma just keeps going.
Continuing and continuing.
going
So you can
and
imagine
going.
7
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
7 generations, right? For something like that to go ahead and uproot itself. So now we're talking about something about slavery, or excuse me, the genocide, right? Where the deplorable conditions took place, right? The dismantling of a family,
Yeah.
right? These things which I shake my head because, of course, I can't even fathom, of course, the amount of atrocities that our people have to go ahead and face.
The trauma. Yeah.
Right.
They're all traumatic.
In that clip, you know what? And what's the name now? Sorry, in that clip, because I remember, of course,
Wow.
our
I've never
elder.
seen.
I know.
I've never seen
I'd have
Dave
lost
have
for
a brain,
words.
a brain fart. That was cute. That was cool.
I was going to refer to, of course, Jean Augustine,
Okay.
right? In regards to, of course, the resilience, the vigilance, right, that we have to display to go ahead and continue on our day-to-day basis, all right? And as well as in the clip, Dr. Joy says this as well, that how resilient of a people we are. Not what we have, but we are. We continue to be, right? It's atrocious to go ahead and see our brothers and sisters still being shot
Yeah.
by law enforcement,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? What happened in Libya, right? To this day. Wow. I don't know.
Wow, Dave just went somewhere. Did everyone see that? Did everyone see this is why sometimes I didn't even stop you. I was just like, you've completely gotten off topic, but okay.
No, but
let's go with it. No.
But you understand, of course, right?
I do understand, of course. It's just, it hasn't, long story short,
right?
It hasn't stopped.
Exactly.
And we're not getting the health. So I had the first disorder, and there's a picture I have there, anxiety. What does anxiety look like? What is good anxiety? What is bad anxiety? How does that look? So first of all, anxiety disorders. These are a group of mental disorders characterized by significant feelings of anxiety and fear. And yes, I'm going to say this. I am taking this out of the DSM, but I'm just giving you the definition, but I want you to just think about how some of these things may play out in your life and you're not realizing it, okay? So anxiety is worry about future events, and fear is a reaction to current events. These feelings may cause physical symptoms such as a fast heart rate and shakiness sometimes, okay? So signs and symptoms of anxiety. And I have a slide up here so you can actually, again, really take a look at when some of this might be happening. So one sign of anxiety, excessive and uncontrollable worry, okay, irritability, sleep disturbances, fear of losing control, dizziness or lightheadedness, fear of being in public. Now, I'm just going to turn this over to you, Dave, and let you go with this one. Why would this type of transgenerational trauma, why would this still be so active in our community? Anxiety, because it is.
Okay, so let's play in the fear part.
Okay.
Right. We can read books. We read countless of books from guys, of course, you know, our ancestors' fear of the slave master.
Okay.
Right. Once we did rebel or did something, of course, incorrect in their eyes.
Yes.
Right. How they went ahead and placed the fear of God, or of course, or in this case, them.
So
as
excessive
God.
and uncontrollable worry.
There you go.
Okay. All right. That's
Right.
good. So check that off. That's something that's happening years ago,
Yes.
400 something years ago.
Right.
That we're still seeing now.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Keep going with
Now
that.
let's take that behavior now, of course, to Caribbean parents.
Okay.
Right. Remember, if a child does something wrong, what is the first thing they do? They draw for a belt.
They draw for a belt.
Right.
Yeah,
They draw
man,
for a
that's norm.
switch. Right. They draw for something.
Yep.
I mean, it could be a wooden spoon for some parents.
A hanger for others, honestly. But
You know,
the
but
fact
real
is you
talk,
draw to beat
right?
to instill fear.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and like once again installs that fear. Although yes, we looked at it as as a disciplinary action. Right.
Fear of losing control.
There you go. Right. For children, okay, for children now who wet the bed.
Okay.
Right. And now, of course, the only way the parent will be able to deal with this is now, of course, by screaming, shouting, right? That fear, once again,
Yeah.
being placed in that child's mind.
Okay.
Right. So automatically now, when that child needs to go to use the bathroom, who knows what's going to happen? Either she makes it or she makes it or
Okay.
not. Right.
Okay. So it's just instilling that fear. So that's why, okay, so this is why sometimes it'll be coming out and why some of us may be feeling it.
Right.
Because I won't lie, sometimes I do feel high anxiety, right? And again, like, we have to take in consideration a few things. There's still genetics. There's
Right.
still environment, this current environment, which honestly, everyone is anxious now.
Of course.
It's not just Africans who are anxious. Everybody is anxious, right? But in the terms of the prevalence of some of these disorders that, again, many of us are walking around only at 50% of our capacity and we don't even realize it. Imagine if you dealt with some of the stuff, even if you just realize what was happening with you, why sometimes things are not going the way you want them to, why your body acts a certain way, why your mind sometimes, that inner talk, why that's happening.
Right.
Imagine you really knew what it was, how much further you could go. Let's say you were working at 70% of yourself instead of the 50 that you're stuck at because you just don't
know. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you have to, again, anything in here, this is why I wanted to bring you in with this discussion, because history holds huge with this, okay? So
Yeah. It's survival mode.
survival mode.
That's all. That's really what that comes down to. Look at rush hour traffic. Rush hour traffic alone is anxious.
Oh my goodness.
You finish work and the first thing you need to do is, I need to go pick up my children. Right? And of course, when that traffic hits and it's...
I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late because
Exactly.
you know we have to pay a fee if we're late. Anxiety. Then we have to get home. We're behind. Got to cook. Got to do this. Got to get the kids to practice.
Right.
Then I have to live a life which never happens.
Which doesn't happen.
So your mind's just going, going, and going. Again, that's what I said. Environment plays a huge part, but it's just not knowing, you know? So another huge one, which we're going to go into some detail later, depression. And I have a picture that I pulled out. I think it might be a quote, just because sometimes there's some things that are happening with us. We don't even know that we're there until like people tell us we're there.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So in the DSM-4, actually there's a DSM-5 out right now. So that's where I got this information. I just own the DSM. I'm so proud of this. I don't know why. For my master's year, I had every psychological disorder in that book, like every single one. And they tell you, listen, be mindful. So depression. So depressive disorders include disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, major depressive disorder. That's the one that I think you see the most, that major depressive. Persistent depressive disorder. Now, there's about 10 or 11 of them here. I will say this again. With this comes rules. There's a certain amount of time that this has to be seen consistently in order for you to be diagnosed. When you go to the doctor, that's why they'll ask you certain questions. How long have you been feeling this for? Have you been feeling it for 6 months? Because sometimes there's those rules. There's a 6-month cutoff. Then there's a 12-month cutoff. Because if depression could just be 6 months, major depression is 12 months.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So there's just depending. And again, is it on and off? It's just depending. But it's, again, understanding the symptoms that come with this and kind of realizing I have sunk into really low depression before, and it wasn't until I learned how my depression looked. You've got to know how your moods look.
Yes.
Because they affect you, okay? So here are some signs of depression. I have another slide for you because, of course. Oh, you know what? Let me wait. We can't put up no slides. Not enough time. We got to go on break.
Then
so
we go on
depression,
break.
real quick. With the depression part, how would our history tie into the depression part of it, Dave?
Let's look at the kind of racism.
You know what? Stop. We don't have enough time. I'm gonna go.
She got me real good with that one, folks.
I didn't mean to, guys. We'll be right back. I just don't want you to start. You're gonna go into a place, guys. He was gonna go into a place again. I had to.
Don't ask me no more questions, okay?
Welcome back, everybody. So,
Greetings.
So today we are actually, as much as we're smiling, you know what? Again, anything that we can do to make sure that this information, because it's very dense and it's hard. This is your life. So as much as we are smiling, I have to just make sure that I get this information out there. Someone actually asked me about mental health. Simone, what are you going to talk about this? Because this is my strength. This is something that I know a lot about. You, the history man, tell me how depression and our history, how does that tie together? I cut him off last time and
I told her, don't ask me no more questions. So I'm not even answering this one.
Please. Please. Do I have to do the look?
No, please don't do that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so let's take on account of when we just came out of the whole abolition of slavery, right? Now, we now have to go fend for ourselves, right? And now, just imagine now being supposedly free persons of the land, right? And now have to go back to the same people, right, who enslaved you in the first place.
To ask for a job?
To ask for a job.
Yeah.
You understand?
Very depressing.
Of course. Of course, right? Let's take it, of course, let's fast forward now. Not being able to go ahead and own our own or have our own, right? We're still fighting for equality.
Yeah.
Right? We're still fighting for, of course, you know, just to get a job. Right? So, of course, these things, of course, will go ahead and be depressing for us.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not where we need to be or want to be. right? Let alone, of course, now, we can't go through this alone. So, of course, we pick up a mate, right? We procreate. And, of course, now we bring children into the mix.
Yeah.
Right? So, of course, now being the head of the household or being the heads of a household, being, of course, trying to be a two-parent household, right? And women expect a certain level.
Hold on.
Hold on. Let me finish, please.
Okay.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Right? There's a certain level, right, of mentality that women do expect and of course want when it comes to relationships.
Got it.
Right? And a lot of men are simply just not there because, of course, once again, there is a depression.
Yeah.
Right? And vice versa.
True.
And vice versa. Of course, by means, you know what, there's certain men out there that have the highest standard for themselves, right? And of course now, bam, they come into this family, make this family with this woman, right? And all of a sudden now you see these attributes that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Right, which are now leading towards, hey, listen, you know what? I'm doing all of this for us, but you're not pulling your share.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on here?
Okay.
Right. So of course, you know, on the flip side, by means, of course, on both sides of the fence there in that case, yes. Right. So I mean, and you know, depression. I grew up in Rexdale.
Yeah, Rexdalians, big up yourself.
You know what I'm saying? So I mean, you know, and not to say, you know, it was the worst,
Yeah.
right, of the city, but there's certain conditions that you're not supposed to go through as children.
And it can be very depressing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right? Let alone, of course, for the parents to say, listen, you know, of course I want better, but what am I supposed to do? My hands are tied.
Yeah.
Right?
Depression.
Of course.
So, some symptoms of depression. I wanted to throw this up because, again, these things can be happening and you don't realize it. So I want you to pay attention to this because this is the biggest one for us. It's the biggest one for, again, all cultures. Depression, okay? Feelings of uselessness, hopelessness, excessive guilt. So that feeling of, I want to do more for my children, but I can't.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've had homies who died because of this feeling.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you know, wanting, not just having any sense of worth for themselves. So they go and put themselves in a position,
Yeah.
of course, too now. And it isn't just,
It's hopelessness.
of course.
It's hopelessness.
Of course, man.
Loss of interest in work, school, hobbies, people, social isolation, agitation and irritability. And this looks different. And also, pay attention, this looks different in children. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
Sad mood, changes in appetite or weight, eating too little, or on the other hand, eating too much. Sometimes when people are depressed, the first thing they do is they put things in their mouth.
That's right.
That oral stage that we never get really by some of us, right? Oversleeping or insomnia. So suicidal thoughts, which is probably the worst one. That's at the highest end. And with that, there's signs for those. And you'll know for yourself if it's you know. And if you see it in someone else, you do know. You know that there's that hopeless where you just feel like there's nothing left. These are serious. You have to pay attention. And you've got to know, for me, how I noticed I was depressed was I would sleep a lot.
Okay.
That would be my thing.
Okay.
I would be able to sleep, honestly, 12 to 14 hours a day. No problem. Get up, eat, and go right back to bed.
Okay.
And I knew that was my cycle. So when I felt that coming on, I always check myself now, like, okay, and this is what I'm saying. This is why it's so important to understand that list. Look at that and see how many on there fit what's going on with you, your moods, right? Guy, what's going on? I'm sorry. This man has me distracted. He's sitting there Bobby Browning behind the scenes. All I see is every little step I take right now. So, yes, depression, something that needs to be paid attention to. And you know what? Even with that, sometimes, guys, I'm going to say this. The best thing for you to do, utilize the healthcare system at the best you can. Get into a doctor. A lot of people don't realize social workers are free. They're covered by OHIP here in Canada, guys.
Worst case scenario, right? If you're looking at the skin color thing, request somebody from your own culture.
Someone from your culture.
Who's going to
live
be
in Canada.
Of course.
They have them
They're going to
here.
be able to go ahead and relate. That way, you know what? Like, you can have that genuine conversation.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just need your own.
Yeah, man.
And honestly, I've been to therapists that were not my culture, and it was harder for me.
Right.
I was able to open up with those who look like me, and it's just...
Just
Sorry,
the way
that's
it
just
is.
the way it is,
Yeah.
right? They understood certain things. Like, just so happened mine was Jamaican, so of course we could talk about like food,
Right.
because it always comes down to food for Jamaicans. Food and beaches. That's all we care about. Have you been to Jamaica? Yeah, when I was younger. you know, those type of things.
Those-
So, but you know what I'm trying to say, though, right? Like, you need to, when you feel yourself there, I would say the very first step is talk to somebody, anyone that you trust and will have your best interest at heart. That's very important. Have your best interest at heart, who can tell you, listen, you probably should do this, and sit with you and hold you accountable
Yes.
to make an appointment to go and talk to somebody. Okay?
Very true.
There's also resources in the community. I wish we could have brought a list, but maybe we can put some up at the end. I can put them in the comments.
No worries.
Just some people you can turn to, because again, like there are places.
They're here.
Yeah.
We're and you know what? There are a lot more workshops which are popping up all over the place.
Absolutely.
Right, because of course the need. Right, there's an extreme need right now. Could you imagine right now? Of course, you know, with the amount of course, you know, situations, things that we have to do on a daily basis. Now, let's say now we were given the free reins to go ahead and do whatever it is that we needed to do for our people. How could we really go ahead and understand, you know, what it is that we need to do, let alone identify our strengths, considering that we've been in survival mode for so long.
It's like staying in that, they said, fight or flight. So it's like staying, there's a part of your body, I really wish sympathetic, parasympathetic. That means that it's the one that, you know, when something's about to happen and you react, it's imagine staying in that mode, in reaction mode all the time. And you guys, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're in reaction mode all the time. And it's terrible for your body. This is why, like, a lot of people don't realize a lot of our sicknesses is caused from our mental health. You don't even know. It's your brain doing it to you. Like, I've seen people who said they could never walk again who are walking fine. And it all came down to this. It was their mentality about life and what was going on with them. So there's so much we can talk about with mental health. You know what? I'm hoping that, you know what, because it's this month, I'll say this. I challenge everybody. If you are feeling anything that does not seem normal for you, reach out.
Right.
Anybody that you trust. Talk to a doctor. Talk to somebody. Get the help that you need. Listen, I'm telling you, there's people out here. This city has a lot of great social workers.
Yes.
Especially in our community.
Yep.
Right?
It's so true.
I'm going to go into one more. There's a couple more that you see a lot, and I think we have time for it. Bipolar disorder. This one is something that, you know what, a few months ago, I'd posted something up that had this word, and somebody actually reacted to it very negatively on LinkedIn.
Okay.
They weren't impressed because they said bipolar disease is not funny. I had to tell her, I was like, I wasn't trying to say that it is funny. It's not. It's something that's very serious. And again, this is another one of those that if you're not aware of it, you could be dealing with it and have no idea and wonder what's wrong with me. Well, it's not that there's something wrong with you, but there's something going on that needs to be like addressed. Yep. Right? So bipolar disorder. All right. This shows you the extremes. With bipolar disorder, this is that disorder where you'll see those extremes in those mood swings. Like the, you know, happy and pleasant one moment and the next moment just chaotic. If you look at those, again, look at how these two behaviors look. Right? Contrasting. Think about people in your life right now who you see that in.
Oh, yeah.
And now this happens in a matter of hours sometimes. This can be like over 36 hours that you see this type of behavior. Right? Or sometimes it's even weeks. Right? Where there's people who can be manic for 3 weeks straight and then just go into this depressed mood where they can't even get off the couch. It's extreme.
Wow.
Okay? So I'm going to show you some of the symptoms. I guess when we get back, I can't do it now, no time. When we get back, we'll talk bipolar disorder.
We are doing this event for the community. But what if CEO actually stood for catching every opportunity? This week alone, I've seen 3 businesses that shut their doors in this community.
Investing in yourself, like you have to know what your brand is first. So there's no other way that you're going to build a brand unless you network. You have to eventually get out there.
And it stems down to a lot of times not having the right knowledge, the right know-how.
So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to our end of the month going into African History Month and
Yes.
Mental Health Awareness Month. And we are hitting some tough topics today. We have these days like this, and it's okay, though.
It's heavy. I mean, you know what? And let's look at it. We're very serious people.
Yeah.
You know, the conditions that we've been placed upon has been very serious as well, right? And what's the sad part is that, of course, although there are some of us who are doing and excelling at it, right? The majority of us are not, right? So, I mean, let's talk.
Okay, so we were talking bipolar in the extremes, and I want to go over some of the symptoms that you will see in the mania stage. We were discussing the difference in our last segment about the difference in the polarity of emotions. That you see when someone has bipolar disorder. Something else I did know that I found out is it's very tough for these people to hold relationships and to have like successful relationships.
Okay.
So if you're one of those people who are kind of going from relationship to relationship and trying to figure out what's wrong, I always tell everybody there's always the common denominator in any situation that you're in, and that is you. So if you find yourself in cyclical situations, you need to look at the one thing that's not changing. Okay? So mania, elevated expansive mood, extreme irritability, very rapid, unpredictable emotional changes, racing thoughts. There's another one actually there. See, this is why he's right. I should just number it. I have to number this. I do. I give my engineer the really hard time. Extreme irritability, rapid, unpredictable emotional changes, racing thoughts, flights of fancy, overspending, sense of grandiosity. So that's that feeling of like, you know, I'm the greatest thing in the world. Like nothing can stop me.
Right.
Like that. A lot of inventions happen during this time, right? You can invent a lot of stuff when you're in this type of mode, right? Because you're awake for like 12 hours. Of course, you're inventing stuff. Inflated self-esteem, decreased need for sleep. Okay, so again, that awake for 10, 12 days.
Right.
Right? And then, of course, the depressive moods, which we talked about earlier, you just, all of a sudden, the person slides right back into that. Right? So it's a tough one. I don't know. What are your thoughts on bipolar disorder?
You know, to be honest with you, I haven't come across anybody who I felt probably who fits the description.
Okay.
Right. But then again,
thank
right?
God, because if you did, I'd be like, who?
This we would have to know,
about,
right?
huh?
This we would have to know, right?
Jeez.
But what I can say is this, though, right? With our people have to go through so much, and it's almost like a broken record in regards, of course, what we continue to go ahead and face. That it's undeniable in regards, of course, some of these things definitely popping up in everyday situations.
Yeah.
And not really realizing it, right? When you say it now, of course, from one extreme emotion to another, yeah, I remember a couple dudes from the neighborhood that would fly off the handle just like that.
Yeah.
Right? Were they bipolar? Who knows?
Yeah. And again,
Who
we should take in
knows,
consideration
right?
genetics and environment.
Exactly. But at the same time, I mean, that quick to rise, the anger, that temperament, I mean, 1 minute you're cool, and the next minute, listen, man, we can't flex right now because you got to stay over there with all of that, right?
So
knows,
life
man?
situations, a lot of these things too, I wanted to introduce that, are brought on by drugs, right? And now I'm sure that's a whole different topic.
Right.
That's a whole different conversation with the drugs and how that's infiltrated our community.
Yeah.
But drugs are drugs and alcohol, another huge factors, and sometimes some of these things being set off. So like, and again, like when you're in the middle of things, you don't even know what's happening a lot of the time. And this is why it's really important, again, to have a really good circle around you. Unfortunately, when you're in these type of states, you don't have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Right? And the ones you have are probably not conducive to your health, unfortunately. They're probably in the same space you are. And that's like the blind leading the blind, really. Right? So that's how sometimes, and again, like, it's unfortunate because I really do believe that a lot of this is post-trauma and transgenerational trauma. And you know what? Not just with us.
No, I mean, you know, like...
It's not just with
You're
us.
speaking, of course, on disorders and symptoms that take place in anywhere, any culture, any person, anytime, anywhere, right? So I mean, that makes it such a universal subject.
Absolutely.
Right? And of course, at the end of the day, when we're looking at it, right, we're trying to become better human beings so we can foster better relationships. So of course, now our society becomes, a much more livable and enjoyable environment, right? So I mean, now of course, we have now a bunch of people walking around with all types of disorders and not realizing what's going on, right? Then we're gonna have to, like, we have comments like the chickens coming home to roost, because of course, the type of level of violence that we're seeing out there today.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's true, and
it's important.
The thing with this too is, like, you have to understand that a person sometimes may not just have one thing. There could be a few things like that comorbid. It's where you have multiple, right? Where that's when it's scary, because alongside that can be those addictive personalities, which we're going to hit into. Then we're even this month, we're going to talk about body dysmorphic.
Oh boy.
That one is going to be a huge topic, because with that we can go into colorism. We can go into a whole bunch of different things.
Right.
Why people like Michael Jackson, Lil' Kim completely altered themselves. Right. So there's, I understand. I've always said this. I understand this type of stuff talks. It speaks to everyone. But for me, my job is to work with my community. I have to, because honestly, I know what it's like to see people suffer. Schizophrenia is another big one. Psychosis is huge. Psychosis is huge in our community, and it's dismissed. It really is. My grandmother had schizophrenia. Until my grandmother had it, I had no idea what that even meant,
right,
and what that looked like,
right?
And it's scary to watch. It's scary to watch someone go from being a very strong, like my grandma was a strong woman,
right,
to not being able to know where she was, and just seeing someone go through that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's
right?
painful.
And it's something that, again, when these things are in your family, you have to be aware, because they're passed down genetically as well, right? So if, let's say your mother had severe depression, right? And you're aware of it, but you're not really aware of it. That plays out in your life without you being aware of it.
Course.
That whole 7 generations thing, Dave, that you said.
Yeah.
Well, that just gets passed on, and if it's not caught,
it continues to repeat.
It continues to repeat. Sounds like a Matrix movie. Like, it's one of those, like, something that has to be deleted.
You're right, it does.
Black Mirror, everybody. Black Mirror. I know we're supposed to be, like, bootlegging Netflix or whatever, because
what Monique said?
Monique's not impressed with y'all. But Black Mirror is crazy. A lot of these topics can be found. You want to see some mental disorders? Watch Black Mirror.
I agree.
Okay?
I
That's
agree.
crazy. Anyhow, yeah, Netflix. Bad Netflix. So, no, honestly, serious. These things are important for us as a community to know. We need to be aware of, and again, like, I will never have enough time to go into any of this, but I will say this to everybody. If there's something that you have seen in your life or someone that you care about, please feel free to email Dave or I, okay? And DM at, it's not up there. Oh, it is. At Simone Jennifer Smith, at IR Dave Rankin.
Yeah, it's also down here too.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then it's...
Like, I have it up on the screen.
It's, see, Jordan's doing his job again. Right? And I'm not paying attention. So, but no, honestly, send us some information. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you. I see it. If you want us to go in depth, because again, this month is going to be focused on that. We're going to have some guests come in, because obviously there's a lot of events happening Black History Month, and we want to make sure we get it out there. We want everyone to know where they can go, what they can see when the Black Panther opening is. Oh my gosh, so excited. What else? Just people in the community doing different things.
Right.
But our basis and a lot of this month is going to be focused on our history and what we've been through. And trust me when I say we are not going to be all doom and gloom.
No,
we're going
not
to
at
talk
all.
some great things, because there's some great psychologists who I think people need to know about. And just watch
Very
a
true.
YouTube video on Dr. Amos Wilson. Oh my goodness, that man was fire.
Yes, he was.
Right?
Yes,
So,
he was.
Dave, I'll let you end us off. Anything you want to let the audience know about what we're going to be doing this month and why you're doing it?
There's an importance to go ahead and celebrate us, ourselves, right? And be unapologetic about it, right? Image is everything for us, right? And of course, throughout the years, we've been force-fed an image, right? Of not our own doing, right? So, I mean, anytime we get a chance to go ahead now, right, and reclaim that image, change the narrative, regarding those images as well, by means, this is a wonderful starting point in African History Month, right? Of course, with it being, of course, the 28 days of the month, by means, throw that out the window. That's the least of your worries regarding, of course, what it is or where it does take place. If you can look at African History Month as a starting point, then from here on in, you can look at every day of your life as being, of course, that focal point of learning your history, right? And, of course, using that history of knowledge of self to go ahead and propel you towards your future.
Have a good night.
Peace and love, family.
Awesome. Wow. Have a good night, everyone.